Hi, I'm Ethan Slater, and welcome to the Theater Podcast with Alan Seals.
Hey everyone, happy 2025, happy new year. I hope everything was safe and warm wherever you were when the ball dropped. This is the Theater Podcast with Alan Seals. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and this is an all-new episode with Ethan Slater, who we originally had back on the podcast in episode 142 quite some time ago. But since he is Bach in the Wicked movies, which just dropped, part one, of course, we had to have him back to dive into all things Wicked and what he's been doing since we last spoke. And this time we dive into the Wicked movie, his experience on set. We also get into some fascinating twists, such as having a day's notice to get from the East Coast to LA to secure his spot in the movies. He talks about advocating for himself in auditions, redefining characters on stage and screen, which he's now done several times with his revival of Spamalot and Assassins, and of course now Wicked. This conversation dives into what it means to step into these iconic roles, the balance of luck and preparation in showbiz, and the deeply personal process of storytelling. As a writer, storytelling means a lot to him. So trust me, Ethan's candid reflections and passion for his craft will leave you inspired, and we might even learn a thing or two about what it was like filming the Wicked movies and bringing these iconic stage characters to life for the big screen. Don't forget to follow me on social media. Check out Patreon for the video version of this episode. And now everyone, please enjoy this episode with Ethan Slater.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today's guest is a special one for me, a returning guest to the podcast who we originally heard back in episode 142. His career has since skyrocketed with additional stage work that includes the recent 23-24 revival of Spamalot and TV work that includes Lost on a Mountain in Maine, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and of course playing the complicated and forlorn character of Bach in Wicked the Musical Part 1 and 2. Part 1 just dropped November 24 a few months ago, and Part 2 is scheduled for 2025. Hopefully that does not change because it cannot come soon enough. Ethan Slater, welcome back to the Theater Podcast.
I'm gonna be honest. I think you should keep Even Slater. That's kind of cool. Even Stevens.
Slater.
Even Slater.
Evie Slates. Okay.
I love it.
Evie Slates.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, man. Like, it's so good to see you again. I enjoyed. I was listening back to our previous interview, and it was a lot of SpongeBob talk and things about. We had just come out of the pandemic, and stuff was starting to pick back up again. So I kind of want to dive back in. We're gonna skip over the origin story. So, listener, if you want to listen to that, go back to 142. But picking up from the pandemic, I guess Spamalot, was that in the making before the pandemic, or did that kind of come around afterwards?
No, that came around afterwards. That was a nice sort of life raft that came in right when we found out that there was going to be an actor's strike. We were in the middle of filming Wicked.
Right.
And maybe a couple of weeks before the strike, I got a phone call saying, hey, would you be into doing Spamalot on Broadway? Which is, whether or not there was a strike, I would have been excited about that. I love Monty Python, love Spamalot. Just the coolest thing ever. So it came at a really great time, but it also was sort of a last minute thing for me. They had done it at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And Rob McClure, who is,
he was out on tour on
unmatched.
Doubtfire.
Unmatched in talent. Yeah,
Right.
He was going out in Doubtfire, so they needed somebody to replace Rob McClure for the Broadway run. So I was very lucky and grateful. He's a really great guy. But yeah, no, actually, during the pandemic, the thing that was sort of like brewing that ended up coming out of it was Assassins, which I feel like I started just a couple months after we spoke.
Right.
Yeah, which was another, like, we started rehearsals the last day of February in 2020. We were 2 weeks in, and they were like, hey, so we're just going to take Saturday off. We'll be back on Monday.
Sure.
Just a slightly longer weekend. It's going to be fine. On Sunday, they say, we're going to take Monday off. It's going to be fine. We'll be back on Tuesday. And then we came back a year and change later.
I remember where I was when I got the news that Moulin Rouge had canceled a performance, and I was like, this is not good, because if Moulin Rouge does it, and then we famously blame that cast for bringing COVID into the Broadway space. It's all their fault.
Right from their opening night. Yeah.
But no. You've worked on done Assassins and Spamalot. I guess going back to Spamalot for a second, like coming into Rob McClure's this role that Rob McClure had developed out of town. It's a revival, but you're filling So you're filling shoes originally from the revival. You're filling. I keep thinking in my mind, squeaky shoes because of SpongeBob.
Yeah.
But it's not squeaky shoes this time. So you're filling these shoes. You're coming to this role, and with this cast like Leslie Kritzer and James Monroe Iglehart, and just these comic legends that you're sharing the stage with now. Like, what was it like for you to kind of come in and put your own spin on all of that?
It's a really lucky thing to share the stage with, consummate professionals and just like the best comedians and clowns, that are working on Broadway, because you feel really safe to mess around and just like sort of maybe fail a little bit, because if you fail, somebody else is going to pick it up. If you drop the baton, Chris Fitzgerald is there to pick it up every time.
Chris is one of the funniest people I've ever seen on stage.
He's incredible. And he was, the first Bach on Broadway. He was the original Bach on Broadway. So I feel like he's somebody I have always looked up to, and so many of those people are people that I've always looked up to and I've always like admired from afar. So to be able to admire them from close up and to make them laugh and have them make me laugh in the rehearsal room, it's like, you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right. What was your favorite part? Because that track covers different characters within the show. So did you have a favorite that you kind of got to dive into and just like dive into the truly absurd?
I mean, honestly, Not Dead Fred is the best, because also it's like right out of the gate. Like I do the historian, there's like a little scene, and then I get dragged on in a totally different look, and I'm just kind of being, I flop around the stage. I do pratfalls, and I get to like tumble and be dumb and silly. And I think that was a really fun one right out of the gate. And also, it's it's like a good way to kick off the show. Once you like get through that number, you're like, all right, well, it's pretty easy from here.
Downhill, I guess. Yeah, the hardest one comes straight out. I mean, because you were kind of all over the place in Not Dead Fred.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's like jumping. It's a great little workout.
Yeah, that's interesting. You'd mentioned that you're doing Spamalot during the TV film writers' strike, and I remember, gosh, I mean, when it was announced that there was a Wicked movie coming, the internet exploded. The internet broke, and then everything got shut down for various reasons in the writer's strike, and the internet broke again because, like, what are we going to do? So I guess back up. We'll get to the writer's strike portion, but let's back up. Tell me the timing of all of this, because in like SpongeBob closed, 2017, right? 2017, 2018?
2018.
2018. And then, like, you were working on Assassins. You're also, last time we spoke, you were also writing some things of your own. And then the pandemic hit, and then the writer's strike. And so give me the timing of what's been happening at this point.
Oh, wow. I mean, a lot's happened since sort of 2018 when SpongeBob closed. We actually ended up coming back about a year later to film SpongeBob. So we got to revisit those characters, our like own little mini revival, stage the whole show and film it, which was really cool.
That's for the Nickelodeon I started doing production, right?
Yeah, for Nickelodeon. It's on Paramount Plus now for the little plug if you want to watch it.
There you go.
But yeah, no, it's like it's been, an actor's career is really funny, right? Like you like jump around, do little things. You do like 2 days on a TV show here. You get to work on like a really fun indie film over here and there, and sort of make things work. And then getting to do Assassins was a really exciting thing for me in 2020. It was right after we finished filming SpongeBob. It came out Christmas of 2019, around there, I think. And then, 2020 was right around the corner. And I had this great experience auditioning for John Doyle for that, actually, because I had a really good friend of mine reached out and was like, hey, you've probably, read for this role or, been in conversations about this role. It seems perfect for you. And I was like, I actually didn't know that Assassins was happening yet. I'm not in the conversation at all. So I called my agent and I was like, hey, Danielle, do you mind just like reaching out, seeing what's up? I'd never done that before, really. I had never like proactively reached out, but I love Sondheim and I love Assassins, and I play guitar and I write music, and I'd always wanted to like sort of do a John Doyle production. John Doyle, who directed it. So she reaches out, and they were willing to see me for The Balladeer, but not for Lee Harvey Oswald. They were going to split up the roles. And I remember being like, hey, I really think I can do this. And John, no knock on John at all. He's wonderful, and he's the most open, creative, collaborative director. But his response, or at least the way it got filtered to me, was, he kind of sees, like, he sees that you could be the bright-eyed balladeer, but you're like kind of SpongeBob, like you're like, that doesn't seem quite right for Lee Harvey Oswald. And I was like, please, like, let me come in and read for it. I think I could really do it. And they were like, read for the balladeer. It's like, okay, great. So I came in, I learned all the music on the guitar. I played it, whatever. We talked, John and I talked for 20 minutes. This is like a thing that he's known for doing, is you don't really audition that much. You just kind of talk. And then as I walk out of the room, he says like, hey, can you come back in a couple of days and we'll do the other role too. So I came back in a couple of days later. I read Lee Harvey Oswald. We talk a little bit more. And then I'm on the subway ride back home, and I get the call that it worked, and he's down for me to play both roles.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's like a really like amazing moment of me being like, I don't know. It's hard sometimes when you're an actor and you're waiting for someone to give you a job to feel like you can advocate for yourself in that way. And obviously I had done SpongeBob, so I had some like laurels to rest on, I guess is a word to use. But I was also like,
and a drama
or whatever. And I was like,
I mean, you got.
But I was like, I can cred. I can do this sort of other thing. Like actually, SpongeBob was to me the anomalous role. I was surprised to be playing SpongeBob. So I can do the Lee Harvey Oswald thing. I really would love the chance to. Anyway, so that's just me like patting my own back a little bit, which is just like, it felt really good to be able to like advocate for myself and say like, hey, I can do multiple things. Actors sometimes quickly get pigeonholed into what they can or can't do, but you spend your entire life training to be able to do anything. And then suddenly they tell you, hey, you're really good at this one thing. And you can follow that because you can make a career doing that. But like, it's nice to be able to advocate and say, hey, I can do this other thing too. So I'm just like, I was really, in some ways, I'm like proud of myself for that. In the other ways though, I'm really grateful to my friend who saw this role, saw this breakdown. I was like, hey, this would be perfect for you. You should really see what's up.
That's interesting. I was going to say, before you said it, you literally said the word advocate. I was going to say that this is a great example of when you feel you're right for a role, you should advocate for it, because sometimes people, like you said, exactly, they see you as your last project. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's all they see you as, especially if it's something big. And your Broadway debut, coming out of the gate into SpongeBob, that was just in a whole different realm of comedy that now, I mean, what am I trying to say? I guess like you don't want to be pigeonholed as this squeaky shoed sponge, underwater sponge.
And how lucky am I for that to always like be with me? Like that's the greatest thing in the world, Like I'm really grateful to always be the squeaky shoed sponge, some of the time.
some of the time, right? So then, while you were doing Spamalot, though, you said you were pausing. It was great, this godsend, pausing Wicked. So how did you get connected to Wicked in the first place, and when was that?
I mean, that was maybe May of 2022. I got somewhere around there, maybe April, May of 2022. I just got a self-tape, They were casting this movie. They'd already cast Cynthia and Ariana. Everyone knew that they were playing the roles. And I, like probably so many other people, I don't know how wide their net was, but I imagine that everyone who was 5'7" or under who has ever done musical theater was reading for this role, and then some.
Was that part of the breakdown? Like, have to be 5'7"?
Yeah, have to be 5'7" or have to be 5'7", but say 5'6".
So you beat out Tom Cruise, I guess. That's what.
Maybe.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. Well, Tom Cruise. Well, he was. I mean, he gave a pretty good audition, but
yeah.
Ultimately, I think he ended up pulling out before the screen test. So it was really, that's at least what they told me.
Right.
But I sent in a self tape. It was one of half a dozen self tapes in a week or in a couple of weeks. But I remember thinking, like, look, that there's no chance I get this. This is a really coveted role. I'd auditioned for Bach in 2013 on Broadway, and I didn't get it. I was like, I really want to give this my all because I think I've always thought that this is something that I kind of could do. And when I made the self-tape, actually, I was doing a 29-hour reading with Christopher Fitzgerald, who I ended up doing Spamalot with, and who was the original Bach on Broadway. And I didn't want to tell him that I had this self-tape because I didn't want to then have to tell him that I didn't get it. I didn't want to have to update him. But I did take a selfie of the two of us on that day just to commemorate that I went to work, I worked with Chris, I went home, and I made this tape. And I was alone. I didn't have anyone to read it with, so I recorded all of the other voices. I recorded Glinda, and I recorded Nessa Rose, and I put my computer behind my phone, and I read with myself. Which was like, it felt like a really bold strategy. It was, necessity is the mother of invention. I had no one to do it with, and I had to see what I could do. And I like left spaces in the dialogue for me to say the lines, which meant that I had to like really time it out.
Yeah, that's a lot of prep.
It was a lot of prep. It was probably some of the most work I've put into an audition, but I still was like convinced there was no chance I was getting it. And I sent it off and I kind of forgot about it. And then maybe a month later, I hear that John wants to like meet on Zoom, kind of like John Doyle actually. John Chu and John Doyle, not such different experiences. We got on Zoom, and we just talked. We talked about Wicked. We talked about The Wizard of Oz. We talked about his vision for Munchkins, and then how does that align with the way that I see Bach, and if Bach is sort of the representative of Munchkins in our sort of like principal cast, in our main cast, Bach is like sort of the representative of Munchkins. How do I see Bach fitting into that world, or being somebody who's an outcast from that world? What do I see as the role of loneliness in like the development of character? And it was just like this really beautiful conversation like about our personal lives and about the way that we see this world. And then I didn't hear again until the end of July. And
2022.
2022.
Okay.
So it's July 2022. I'm filming a movie in upstate New York. And I'm about to do a night shoot, and I call my manager, and this is like sort of like advocating for myself, sort of like letting my neuroses talk, I was like, hey, I'm so sorry to do this, and I don't usually do it, but like, I had a meeting with John about a month and a half ago. It went really well. I'm sure that it's not going my way, but like, could you just reach out to check just for my like, peace of mind? And if it's not going my way, do you mind just seeing if he would be open to me writing a note and saying thank you? Because it was like really I'm a huge fan of John's, and he really took the time. It was really meaningful to me. And my manager, who's absolutely incredible, was like, yeah, I'll do it. I think we would have heard, but just to like keep your expectations, but like, I'll do it. I'll do it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hangs up. I get into bed because I'm getting ready to like go to my night shoot, and he calls me 3 to 5 minutes later, and he says, "Hey, so can you be on a plane tomorrow to Los Angeles
What?
to do a screen test?" I was like, "Let's figure it out." So I basically like I shot this movie. I shot until 3 or 4 in the morning. Got in a car. That was Lost on a Mountain in Maine, actually, which you brought up earlier. They were wonderful. I got in a car, drove 3 hours to the airport, got on a plane, flew 5 hours to Los Angeles, and went right to the studio and read for Bach. And that was how I got it.
Who did you read with?
I read with a bunch of really wonderful actresses reading for Nessa. None of them were Marissa Bodie, actually. And Marissa is amazing, but she came in kind of late, and they were sort of looking for the perfect Nessa. And this is kind of a tangent. We're now out in October. I'm in London. We're rehearsing. I've been rehearsing for a couple of weeks, and I keep on asking John, like, who's gonna be Nessa? And he's like, we're looking, we're gonna find her. And then he like one day he comes down to like the big airplane hangar where we're like rehearsing Dancing Through Life, and he said, I don't want to get your hopes up yet, but this young woman just sent in a tape, and she is perfect. Like you're gonna lose your mind. Like she's incredible.
Wow.
And that was Marissa. So it was late in the game, but again, like,
yeah, I know they
right
had a hard
place, right
time finding Nessa. I remember reading about that. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. Going back to like you randomly I guess felt the need to call your manager. The universe reached out. All the stars were aligned. Saturn was in line with I don't know.
Sure.
Thanos was snapping his finger somewhere.
Yeah.
And do you think if you had not called your manager and your manager had not called them, they still would have called you in? Or was that just one of those things like, oh yeah, we like this guy, let's bring him in?
You know what? I have always, for months, I thought, wow, I really saved the day. I was like, I nailed that. If I hadn't called, if I hadn't let Andrew know, then this never would have happened. And then I talked to John later, and he gave me sort of the flip side of it, which is that he was like, "Oh, we kind of actually, penciled you in off the self-tape."
Wow.
He was like, that could have gotten erased at any point, but like you were in off the self-tape. I was like, it's such an opposite experience.
Yeah,
they
just goes
wanted
to
to
show
find
you
the
never
mess
know.
You never know. You never know. Like I do like pride myself on working really hard and getting really prepared and all that stuff. But like the being in the right place at the right time and sort of the elements of luck and like privilege that have aligned with me being prepared for the moment, that's not lost on me. Like you have to have a certain amount of luck to get yourself in the place where you can send in a tape for Wicked and have it be seen by the right person.
Mm-hmm.
That happened with SpongeBob. It happens every time, and I think that is kind of what life is, right? Like not everyone can be in every place, but I'm really it's never lost on me.
What is that famous saying? If you're always prepared, then you never have to be, or something like
that's
that.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, something like
I don't know, that's good though.
Yeah. Well, we can start that. Let's start that right now. Ethan Slater says.
Yeah.
Even Slater says.
Yeah. Even Slater says.
Even Slater. The conversation with John, going back to like when you got the call, like John Chu, this little director who hasn't done very much, right? Like obviously he's a big deal. So you get this call, you want to have a meeting with him. Do you remember? You're like, holy crap, what is gonna happen? I feel like I would be more nervous to meet with John than just to send in the self-tape.
Yeah, I people ask like, do I remember getting the call that I got the job? And actually the thing that I remember exactly where I was and like what I was wearing and like where I was going and I remember exactly everything about getting the call that I had a meeting with John.
Huh.
Nothing super descriptive about it. Like I was just walking to the train to rehearsal. I remember the block I was on. And I think that was a moment that for me felt like a really big moment because whether or not I got the job, I got to meet somebody whose work I love, and I was being put in a position that I'd always wanted to be in, which is to like meet with artists that I like am dying to collaborate with and like, potentially get a job that I would do anything to get.
How much of the movie script were you sent or were you told about when auditioning for it? Because none, really?
None. No, absolutely none. No, I auditioned from the musical.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They sent you musical script?
Yeah, I did. Miss Galinda. I know I'm just a mere munchkin, but even a munchkin has feelings, and I've tried to tell you of mine for you.
Really?
Yeah.
Because what I was going to say was that now I've seen the movie multiple times. It's just one of my favorites, and it's breaking all these box office records, and it's great. And so congratulations for all your part in this.
Thanks.
Because it's well deserved. The script, I mean, the book is much darker than the musical. The musical's more Broadway musically. And then I know part one kind of movie part one kind of like nods to the darkness, and we see a lot more of the internal struggle, the internal conflict of all these characters, because you just have the film privilege of being able to zoom in on people. You can't do that on stage.
Yeah.
Especially like at the opening scene where like Ariana Grande, you can see on her face, it's so conflicted how much she's trying to pretend that the death of Elphaba doesn't bother her. Like that's just heart-wrenching. And then for your scenes too of what you're trying to do to pretend that you like Nessa, that Bach likes Nessa, in order to still, leading her on to try to get Glenda to like him, and all of this internal struggle and conflict is so well read without hitting you over the head with it, and it speaks to your talent, it speaks to everyone else's talent, John's talent as a director of playing this out. But how did you guys go into this conversation of separating your performances from the stage performances?
Well, I don't think it was necessarily about separating it. I think it was like, we talked earlier with Spamalot, like reviving and stepping into somebody's shoes, and like the thing that I'll say about Christopher Fitzgerald is I will never be Chris Fitzgerald. Mm-mm. I can't. Nobody can. He's unbelievable and unique and a genius. And so if I try to be him, I'm just going to come up short. And so the thing that felt really important when approaching Bach was like, if I didn't know anything about what Chris was doing, right? Like I wanted to take things from it. So I needed to like be aware, because he made really great choices and I wanted to like hold on to some of that. But if I wasn't like thinking about how do I do Chris well, who is Bach at his core? That's what I was like, that's how I was trying to approach it. And you end up like accidentally taking some of the things and then recognizing, oh, that's from him. Maybe I can lean into that further. Or, oh, that's so different from that. And why did I choose something different? Maybe I should lean this way or that way. Like you can use him as like a sounding board when you're like revitalizing a character or replacing somebody. But like you have to think like, who is Bach, not how has Bach been played. That's kind of my approach, and it was my approach with SpongeBob too. And I think it's like, I think it was really helpful. And that was the conversation that I had with John. We never talked about how does it work on stage. We never like compared or contrasted. We just talked about who is Bach. So I think that one of the things that was always really important to me, and actually in talking to Chris too, he said the same thing, is like, Bach is really well-intentioned. Bach doesn't realize he is doing something hurtful to Nessa. And actually, I think one of the things that was really nice about the film, like you talked about getting to sort of like be close to us and see our reactions and see the spark of realization in a way that you just can't on stage. It's just a thing of the medium. Allows that moment to be like, not just manipulative to dance in front of Glinda, but rather like a spark of like, oh my God, if I'm doing this out of pity, that's hurtful to you. And it sort of acts as a foil to the relationship between Elphaba and Glinda. You know, we're a B plot, C plot, you know, and so that we need to function that way. We need to be a foil to what's happening there. And in the same way that Glinda realizes that she has put Elphaba in a horrible situation, and it is so important to her that she not feel that pain, and that's like a big bubble bursting for her. It's like a big moment of realization. It changes the course of their lives. Yeah, absolutely. That's a moment for Bach too in the Ozdas ballroom, where he realizes, oh, he's insulted Nessa, and he has no reason to. She's great. She's like a totally great person in her own right. She's wonderful. And so I think that we were able to develop like a real friendship there in the little moments.
Playing him, so play the character how the character, like who is the character, not emulate how an actor interpreted the character previously. And I mean, that's the great way to go into any revival, into any adaptation of something, is just dissecting who the character is. And Bach to me is somebody, like, you want to love-hate Bach because he's doing bad things, but he doesn't mean to do bad things. And he, like you said, he's well-intentioned and feels guilty about it. You can tell that, the way that you played it. You can tell there's guilt behind this. But then at some point, it's kind of the Dear Evan Hansen effect, that you got to keep going because you're already in so deep. Right? So...
yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, what's exciting about movie 2, though, yes, got to keep going because you're in so deep. But then movie 2, there's this moment of like, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's like you've gotten in so deep that and you realize you were never in control. You know, you kind of thought you were in control, but you never were. And I think that there's something exciting there. And John has talked about like Grant's big scheme, especially with Elphaba, especially with Glinda, in these big moments with Fiyero, and I think with Bach and Nessa too, in a really big way. This movie is about, what do you do when the truth is revealed? When you understand the truth for the first time, what do you do? And that moment happens for each character in a different place. It hasn't happened to Bach yet. The truth hasn't been revealed to Bach yet.
Right.
There have been little truths that have been revealed, but the big one in his life has not been revealed yet, and it's coming.
And I think that is why this cutscene was cut. I before we started recording, I sent you 3 pages of a script of a cutscene that you did film. It ended up filming. It's at the train station. It's extra fodder around the train station scene.
Can I say, the first thing that I want to say is I loved the scene. It was so fun to do. Getting to work with Cynthia in this way was really amazing. It's a beautiful, I was so proud of it. And I love the line, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were being honest." But first of all, it can be hard emotionally when something that you worked on gets cut from a movie. you know? Mm-hmm. You watch it and you're like, oh man, like that was a good moment. That was a good character development moment for Bach. That was a good whatever. I remember watching the movie for the first time, and I knew that the scene had been cut. And when I got there, I was like, thank God. That
Really?
was the right call. And I think it was the right call because this movie is about Elphaba and Glinda. It is about their journey together. We get so much of this Elphaba journey without this scene. This scene I think was really cool for developing Bach's point of view, and I think the way that we approached it was really in line with what you and I were just talking about Bach and Nessa, and the respect and love that they have for each other, even if it's a platonic love. I think the way that we performed it was really, you know, whatever, all those things. But the movie is more than the sum of its parts, and so even if this is a really beautiful moment, and you know, it helped me inform my character, I saw the movie and I was like, this would have maybe, this is not the right place. We need to focus, as John did, on the two women who are just like killing it, and they are like in this beautiful, momentous place. So that was actually a really good learning experience for me. We talked about me being a writer and also an actor, and that was a really good learning experience for me of like, oh wow, this was absolutely, in my opinion, the right call.
So, okay, I agree with what you said, and I want to posit here that my initial theory before I heard what you just said was that it was cut because part one is not about the darkness in Bach. Because we were talking about the part one being lighter, part two, the book is dark. I've heard tell that part two is going to deviate further from the musical and dive into Elphaba's darkness. You feel free to confirm or deny right now, whatever you would like. You're shaking your head. Okay.
Nothing.
You don't know.
I'm not giving.
And so I think my initial thought was that it was chosen to cut that scene because it was too much of too much away from the happy kind of, I guess, just sympathy that we need to feel from Bach. That's the first time he says something that's actually kind of mean. And I don't think we need to see that until Act 2.
Look, that might have been it. But I think what's funny is that, like, I can only guess so much, and obviously we talked to John and all that stuff, but he has his own creative reasons and everything for doing it, and that might be a big part of it. It's funny though, because when you're playing a character, I know that hurt is in there, right? So like, that's the little thing where, and actually it's been an interesting thing to talk about. Like, what do you show? When do you show it? As an actor, you don't show. I'm trying to remember who the director is who says it. He says, people don't show you emotion. They try not to show you the emotion.
Right.
So even in this moment, though it's written quite emotional and it's written quite big, I think there's hopefully a chance of him trying to not let on. But I think it's in Bach all the time. This feeling is in Bach all the time. It's a seedling that grows and grows and grows. And it's John's job to make sure, like you're saying, maybe not show it too soon. Maybe it's not about, like, Bach can't go there in the first movie. But that feeling is in there.
Yeah. And after you said what you said, I think that line, I thought we were being honest. I wish they had kept that in there towards the end. Like, it doesn't, you're right, it doesn't belong in this train scene. The train scene needs, the stuff with Governor Throp needs to happen quickly. We need to move on to the happy stuff of getting on the train and getting to the Emerald City. And I totally feel like it was not the right place for that line, but man, it's such a good line. And
it's a good line. It's fun. I will tell you, one of the first things that Ariana and Cynthia said to me when I met them arriving in London was, "You have our favorite line in this movie."
And it got cut?
Ariana said it's my favorite line in the movie. I was like, which one? She was like, you know the one. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were being honest. She goes, that's it.
Oh no, everyone's favorite line got cut.
I know.
All right, well, we're bringing attention to it here. I love that. And
it's funny. I mean, but it's funny because also, like, I don't really know what the decorum is. I don't know if we're supposed to talk about the deleted scenes or not talk about the deleted scenes. I think they're gonna eventually release deleted scenes, which is cool and fun. But then they release the script and everyone is like reading it and we're like, oh God, all these all these things that we like,
Yeah. Well, there's the montage. Like everyone's bummed that they don't get to see you shirtless in that montage before the poppy scene, right? Because there's a whole montage that got cut too of you guys just hanging out in the field and everybody's together and picking poppies, and that's why Elphaba comes into class holding the poppies, and it works not explaining it, but some people would have liked to see it. It's good.
That's
but
funny.
What else? I guess. Well, are you allowed to say what else was cut? Those are the two big ones that I know of.
Allowed is such a funny word. I don't know. I feel. I mean, what else was? I don't know. There's a lot of little. The one line that I do feel like is a favorite in the musical of Bach's that did get cut, which we did film, but it was again totally fine. Is what's in the punch? Lemons and melons and pears. Oh my! Which I always loved. That was fun.
Yeah. I don't know. That seems too cheeky, but in context, who knows? It could have been delivered perfectly. What was it like being in these massive practical sets? To realize all of a sudden when I heard like the train was real and the sets were real and 9 million tulips were planted, like this was insane. It blew my mind.
Yeah, it felt insane. It felt larger than life and really exciting. But also it's this funny thing because, people talk about the effect of CGI, or people think that, there's a big assumption that we were all on CG sets. And then what has been really beautiful to see is people's reaction to the performances in the movie. Let's take Present Company out of it, but like people have been like really blown away by Ariana and Cynthia, who are just brilliant, right? Like they're just so brilliant. And I think that there's a funny thing about the way that we're talking about the truth of the movie and the way that everybody is like going towards this emotional truth. And obviously we've been talking a lot about the sets, but that gets lost a little bit. A lot of that emotional truth that comes through in the movie is from these practical sets and these like detailed spaces that we are in that allowed Cynthia and Ariana to just like deliver some of the best performances that we've ever seen, right? Like Ariana's physical comedy is fucking brilliant. It's just like unbelievable. Her physical comedy is unbelievable. And that's because she's like engaging with the practical sets in a practical way, and she's able to like do bits based on these crazy contraptions that were built and come up with these brilliant ideas in the moment that you can't do if it's all a pre-planned CGI or whatever. Same thing with Cynthia, and I think the emotional heart is like really boosted by that practical element. Nathan Crowley's designs and everything, and Paul Telswell's costumes.
Oh yeah.
It's just, so that's my take. It doesn't take away from the performances at all. What I just mean is that it enhances it in this way.
No, that's what I was getting at, because you said initially when we started talking about this that there was so much truth, and that was what John talked to you about, is who are these people and what are their truths and what do they want, what do they don't want, and I almost brought this up then, but yeah, the sets themselves being real. I understand now completely why John wanted them to be real.
Yeah.
Wanted these practical sets, because it gives you this physical environment literally that you can bring your truth into as these characters, and it just adds to the performances so well. And I don't know, what the budget conversation was with the studio to get all that approved, but he did. he fought the good fight.
He did. He really did. And it just like takes like one level of work away from the actor, so you can focus on the emotional element of it. It's just like a little bit easier when you don't have to like imagine a tall building.
Right.
You're just standing in front of it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's all beautiful. So before we stop talking about Wicked, I want to do some quick rapid fire just for some fun things to compare your answers to Ariana and Cynthia, who have also answered these questions.
Oh, they have?
So, real quick, just first that comes to mind, rapid fire, who is most likely to be first on set?
Ariana.
Who's most likely to be the last one to leave set?
Either me or Ariana.
Most likely to take a keepsake after you're done filming?
This isn't fair. Ariana.
Most likely to option up?
Cynthia. I don't know. Ariana, no. Are you kidding me? They both do it.
All right, most likely.
Honestly, Johnny would too.
John.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Fair. All right, most likely to stay in character when everyone else is breaking.
Honestly, Bowen.
Bowen. Oh yes, yes. SNL
Well, his character
training.
is one who breaks.
SNL training. All right, most likely to break character.
This has to be rapid fire. I don't know. Most likely to break character. Let's also go with Bowen.
All right, most likely to get the shot in one take.
Cynthia.
Most likely to cry on set.
It's a tie.
Between
Ariana and Cynthia.
and everybody else, and me,
And
when I
everybody
watch
else.
it. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. Let's start to wind down a little bit, and something new that we play on here on the podcast since the last time is Plot in 60 Seconds.
Okay.
And I have a list of popular musicals,
Okay.
1 through 16. You give me a number, 1 through 16. It will correspond to a musical on my list, and you give me that plot in 60 seconds or less.
What if I don't know the musical?
Then you can make it up. I've had some great stories.
Oh God. Okay. Let's go with 14.
14 is, I know you know this one. 14 is Company. Go.
60 seconds
All right.
remaining.
So it is Bobby's birthday. Bobby's turning 35, I believe, and Bobby is in this group of friends. Robert, Bobby darling, Bobby, there's a group of friends, all of whom are
45
coupled off.
seconds
Bobby's been
remaining.
sort of dating around, and is sort of like having this existential life crisis, dating a slew of wonderful people, depending on which
30
version of
seconds
company you're
remaining.
in. It could be people of all genders, and they bring something different to Bobby's life, but they're not bringing fulfillment yet. So Bobby is in search of what is a fulfilling life. What does it mean
15
to
seconds
be alive?
remaining.
Is life all about marriage? Is life about finding someone to share the little moments with? Or is a life about something elusive that you'll never be able to hold on
5,
to?
4, 3,
Okay.
2.
It's not really plot.
That-
That's really, but it's not a plotty show.
No.
It's a series of vignettes.
No, the way you described it was perfect because you were like, and then she goes to this room, or then he goes to this room, and then this room and that room.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like what you did. I'd watch your version of that based on that description. I like it. Okay.
Can I tell you, it was one of the shows like that I saw early on in my sort of high school love of musical theater. I watched it on PBS, the John Doyle version, and it's what made me want to do Assassins so deeply because I loved that version.
Wow.
And I would kill to do it. I love it so much.
Well, put it out there. Advocate for yourself.
yeah, thanks.
Like, all right, whoever's doing Company next, this guy.
Next, yeah.
Yeah,
Again? Now?
Well, it's got to be going somewhere regionally, somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, let's
You
do it.
figure that out. Now, the 3 standard closing questions that we ask to
Okay.
wrap up every episode. You have answered these before, back in episode 142, but I want to see how your answers have changed. So after you answer them this time, I'll give you your original answers. All right, 3 standard closing questions. First one, very simply, is just what motivates you.
What motivates me? I think a couple of times. I mean, it's not a single answer. I think what motivates me is 2 things. One is my family and doing right by the people that I love, and 2 would be I love telling stories and helping people tell their stories and seeing the impact that can have on other people, whether it's one person at a time or more.
The first time you answered this question, you said telling stories that people can connect to. So
Really?
It's still there. It's still
All
there.
right.
I love that. All right. Next question.
Wow.
What advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
Probably gave this advice last time, but I might be wrong. The advice that I found myself giving a lot when I was talking to younger people was it's really hard to take advice, but try to listen and learn from the mistake you're going to make anyway.
Oh, I love that. No, you didn't say that before. You
Oh, I didn't?
You said before, follow every impulse to do your weirdest things while at the same time study the most conventional things.
Wow, that's a good answer.
There you go. All right. Now, last question. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
One musical. I think it would probably have to be Jesus Christ Superstar.
Really? The first time you said Company. That's why I knew that you would know it.
That's incredible. I think I kind of still feel the same way, but you know why I choose Jesus Christ Superstar?
What's that?
Because it is immensely entertaining, and it's one of those shows that you don't have, well, for me, you don't have to be in the right mood for it. You can hit you in any mood.
I can see that. I like
Company can take you to a place, no matter where you start. But Jesus Christ Superstar can bounce you up a little.
I like it. Okay, great answer. So where can we find you online on social media, connect with you on all the places, reach out and say hi?
The only social media I'm on is Instagram. I'm at Ethan Slater. And everything else I've gotten rid of for my mental health.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. So I am on theater_podcast on Threads, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on Facebook. God, I don't post on Facebook anymore. I don't know. I'm out there. Find me, connect with me, leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening now. You can actually watch this on Spotify and leave a comment now on Spotify. That's a new thing they're
look at
doing.
that.
Thanks to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and outro music. You did that same surprised head look the first time because we have a mutual love of Jukebox the Ghost.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yep.
I actually remember that from last time. I remember like having this moment of like, oh right.
Yeah. Ethan, thank you so much. I truly appreciate this conversation and being candid and honest and open. And hopefully when part 2 comes out, we can do this all again and talk about all the deep and dark and stuff that you cannot confirm or deny may happen or may not happen.
I can't wait. It's gonna be fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.